Hello everyone and welcome to Ace Studios. Today I'm going to be following a WikiHow tutorial to make a sketchbook. I'm making this because none of the watercolor sketchbooks that I've ever encountered, even in art stores, are 6x9, which is kind of what I want a watercolor sketchbook to be. So therefore I am following a WikiHow tutorial to make my own. The first part of the tutorial is telling you to put together your sketchbook signatures. I've already done this off camera by folding 3 sheets of watercolor paper together perfectly so that they all sit neatly inside one of another. I do this so that in total, front and back, I have about 60 pages for me to work on. The next step is to clip your sketchbook signatures together. You want to be able to draw 4 evenly spaced lines on the spine of your sketchbook signatures so that later when you're poking holes, all of the holes will line up, so all of your signatures will line up when you sew them together. The next thing that you want to do is flatten your pages and then poke your holes through the little marks that you've made in the spine of your sketchbook signatures. Now I used a pin from sewing to start with, and then I realized that I couldn't get a needle through there, so instead I decided to use a push pin, and that's actually what the tutorial suggested. I just didn't have one on hand immediately. If you have a 9-inch spine and 5 signatures, you want to multiply those numbers together and add a little bit of extra length on your string just to make sure that you have enough. The first thing that I did is what was suggested is to use hemp, and I realized when I was trying to push the needle through the hole in the signature that it just was not going to work, so I ended up using embroidery thread instead, using the same method to find the length. The next part is to sew your signatures together, which basically makes the bulk of your sketchbook. I suggest reading through the instructions because for some reason in this part, which is like the most important part, my camera did not focus, which is super great. You go inside through the top hole, outside through the second hole, inside through the third hole, and outside through the second hole, and do the same back and forth through your signatures. You also want to make sure your signatures are tied to each other each time you go back around, just to make sure that they all stick together and don't fall apart or wiggle when you are using your sketchbook. The next step of making your sketchbook is trimming the excess off the pages. Because your papers are folded together, each paper inside the other is a little bit longer on the outside edge, so once they're all sewn together, you want to make sure that you're trimming all of the edges so that the sketchbook lays clean and flat on the open end. If you like them more rugged, you can keep them that way. It's just more of a suggestion, and most people want their edges clean and flat, so if you don't want to do that, that's fine as well. The next part of the process is to get thin pieces of cardboard that are a little bit bigger than your sketchbook signatures to be the cover, back cover, and the spine of your sketchbook. They also said to add 3/4 of an inch to 3 sides of the sketch piece of cardboard so that your pages will have a little bit of protection thanks to the cover. The tutorial suggested that you use paperboard or a thin piece of cardboard, so here I am using the back of a cereal box. If you want it to be a little bit stronger than that, you can easily layer 2 pieces of cardboard on top of each other and glue them together. And snap! Now you have 2 covers. You want to make the spine the same height as both of the covers so that it's not too small or too big. I used the height of the sketchbook covers to make sure that the height of the spine was not too big. The next part of the process is putting on the paper that will cover the outside of the sketchbook. I used 3 different colors of paper to make up the front cover, the back cover, and the spine. In the tutorial, they used all of the same color paper, and that is completely fine as well. Unfortunately, this is the part where I got really confused on how things worked. It seemed as though the visuals that are in the WikiHow article did not really line up with the text, and the text on its own didn't make much sense. I also have had other content that has shown me how to bind books, so I decided to do it a little bit differently anyway. I trace the cardboard covers and then add about 3/4 of an inch so that when I fold over the edges of this paper into the sketchbook, it will look all nice and neat. You also want to put about 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches on the side where the spine is going to connect to the front cover, because you want to make sure that there is a very stable bond between the spine and the two covers. Then I do the same thing to the back cover and cut it out. As you can see, I used a different color paper just because I didn't have the same color of paper for both the front cover and the back cover, and that's totally okay. I think my sketchbook looks even cooler because I have a different cover than a back cover, and it makes it really easy to know that which side is up. The next thing you want to do is get the paper to cover the spine. Now, the tutorial says to add 1.5 inches on each side, but if your sketchbook is smaller and you don't want that big of a overlap on your front and back pages, you can make that anywhere down to about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. Now it's time to glue the paper onto your covers. Make sure that you cover the whole of the cardboard with glue before you put it on the paper, just so that there are no bubbles and everything sticks neatly and nothing will come off. Hopefully, if you've done it right, it should be all flat. Also, if you want to make sure it dries straight, put it under a heavy object. I put it between 2 sketchbooks and then plopped the bin of my art supplies right on top of it to make sure that the glue dried flat. The tutorial also says you should wait for the glue to dry in between putting all of your pieces together, but I'm an impatient bitch and I decided not to. The tutorial also says that the extra edges on the paper should be folded over now, but I disagree. So I didn't do that, and I glued everything together at once. That is the 3rd mistake that I made while creating the sketchbook. It is because the edges that were folded down, I wanted to go over each end of the paper so that it looked more like an actual book cover. I pushed down so that the glue could stick and dry correctly, and then I figured out what my 2nd mistake was. Yes, my 2nd mistake after the 3rd mistake. When I cut out the spine for the sketchbook, I did not cut it thin enough so that when I closed my sketchbook, it looked more like a binder than a book. And that's not something that I wanted. This is mistake number 2 because when I cut the spine of the sketchbook, it was before mistake number 3. I ended up cutting off the spine and the back cover just to separate them from the front cover, which is where all the paper was glued to anyway. I did make a little bit of a mess on the front cover, as you'll see when I was taking off the end paper. So I had to scrap the spine and make another one. And this time I glued 2 pieces of cardboard together to make sure that the spine was extra strong. Now you don't have to do this, but I thought, hey, I have to make a new spine anyway, so why not? I made sure when I remeasured all of these sketchbook signatures were pushed down a little bit so that I could get a more accurate reading. And as you can see here, this spine is a lot thinner than the previous one. Now back to gluing the spines to the covers. You want to make sure that there's a little bit of space between the cover and the spine, just so that there's wiggle room for it to bend and fold as books do. After I secured the back cover to the spine, I made sure to glue the front cover to the spine as well. Then I had to glue everything down, all the little folds, and after that I glued the end page of my sketchbook bindings to the back cover. Then it's time to fold in all of the edges. Now, I must have not cut this cover the exact same as the front cover because it is slightly bigger, and when I was folding all of the paper over, some of it didn't reach the actual binded paper that I was gluing down to the cover. This is probably mistake number 4. Though it wasn't a mistake that I had to go back and redo, and I wasn't going to go back and redo because it was more of an aesthetic preference. After being under the box of my art supplies for a while so that the glue would dry flat, I made sure that all of the pages were unstuck. And that is pretty much it for the WikiHow tutorial making sketchbook. Now you may be wondering what else I'm doing here. I'm just adding a little bit of flair using some stickers that came with the paper that is on the front cover of my sketchbook. All these uneven cuts on the spine paper I wanted to hide with these long stickers, and I think I did a pretty good job. And after you put something on the cover, you can't forget to fold it down on the inside just to make everything super clean and super nice. And the final thing that I decided that I wanted to do is to have a number on the front page. I know this is a sketchbook, but I'm going to be using it as a bullet journal / planner. And you may be thinking, Andre, you can't start a bullet journal in the middle of the year. That's not how it works. Well, the thing is, for me, I didn't use my actual bullet journal for the year of 2018 over the entire summer. I didn't draw anything, I didn't fill anything in, I didn't even make the planner part of the bullet journal that I did for all of the other months. It's not necessarily that I didn't have the motivation to fill it in, I just didn't have to because I didn't use it. And so now I have half of my sketchbook that's part of my bullet journal unfilled because I didn't use it. Because I really wanted to use watercolor on a paper that is really not meant for watercolor. So I decided, why not make this sketchbook with watercolor paper that I can use as my bullet journal, so that I can have a watercolor bullet journal that I can use watercolors in and actually use all the time during the school year. And I thought, hey, that's a great idea because I'm not going to use my bullet journal over the summer, and I already realized that by not using my bullet journal over the summer. And so I hope to use this instead for the whole school year, and that is why I'm putting 2018 and 2019 on the front cover. I really enjoyed making this sketchbook, and if you want to make this sketchbook and you want to tag me on Instagram, please do. I love seeing what you guys come up with my art, and I really appreciate that you're watching it and you are enjoying the content. That being said, if you enjoy this content, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new, make sure that you subscribe. I put out artsy content every single week on Monday. Also, if you have anything that you want to see on this channel, make sure to leave a comment down below so that I can tailor to what you guys are interested in as well as what I'm interested in. And if you guys could get me to 100 subscribers by the end of the year, I would be so thankful, because since I've been posting every week for the past 7 months, so I've been getting an average of 10 subscribers a month, and I'm really thankful for that. But since there's 5 more months left in the year and I am at 52 subscribers, I think it would be very plausible to get me to 100 subscribers. And if you have any suggestions for what I do when I reach that milestone, please leave them down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for next week's video. Thank you guys so much.